Well, my next guest says yes, it's important to talk about Russia, talk about Russians all you want, but if we don't stop the purge of 30 to 60,000 voters in each of 28 states, the 2018 midterm is going to be lost and democracy will be a distant memory. Let's welcome back investigative reporter Greg Palast, the author of several bestsellers, including The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, Armed Madhouse, another one of his books, and you've seen his investigative work on the BBC, The Guardian, Democracy Now!, Rolling Stone. And he has the documentary, the post-release of the election update. It's a great documentary. The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, The Case of the Stolen Election. All right, so much to talk about. Great to have you on the show, man.
Allan, you're the best.
Oh, man, it's always so much to talk about. Geez, it's like, we're living in a bizarro world, and you just can't take control. You can't stop it. It's because this bizarro world have their own media. They believe their own facts. I mean, I don't know where to start. But I do want to start, actually, the update. Because, man, oh, man, what's been going on, that committee that was formed by Trump to investigate voter integrity. What a scam. Give everybody the update, and why do you think he closed it down?
Okay. All right. So if you saw my film, and by the way, you can get it on Amazon Prime for free, so, but my film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, went after this guy, Chris Kobach, who is Trump's vote thief in chief. Before the election, I said Trump was going to win because he's stealing it. And he's going to steal it through removing thousands of voters from the voter rolls. There's nothing new under the sun. This is an old trick by saying that they're illegal voters. Back in 2000, George Bush, I was the Guardian reporter who uncovered that George Bush removed tens of thousands of black people from the voter rolls of Florida, calling them felons. Not a single one was a felon, but that's how George Bush became president. This type of gimmick was then, they put jets on it, expanded it to 28 states, but instead of calling people criminals and felons, they say that they vote twice. Now remember, Donald Trump said, people are voting many, many times, that there are 3 million people who voted twice in the 2016 election. And that number comes from a guy named Chris Kobach, who's the Secretary of State of Kansas. He's in charge of voting in Kansas. You may not care about Kansas. I certainly don't. But I think that this you have to worry about. Chris Kobach, he was appointed by Trump to head Trump's so-called vote fraud commission to find all these fraudulent voters and rewrite the nation's laws. But the answer is there ain't no fraudulent voters. I mean, there's a few. I mean, remember that in America we have lots of elections. We cast about 1 billion ballots a year. 1 billion ballots a year. And they found about four people who voted twice, that is in 2 states in a single election. One guy with Alzheimer's who was 90 years old who didn't realize he'd already sent in an absentee ballot and then showed up to vote. Then there was a couple people with vacation homes who didn't realize their restrictions. But yeah, there's someone always. And there's always the alien voter. Donald Trump, and again, this guy, Chris Kobach, said that 1 million people, 1 million Mexicans, the rapists and et cetera, the 1 million Mexican rapists swam the Rio Grande to vote in the last election illegally. And so they went on this huge manhunt to find the 1 million illegal alien voters. They found one guy, and he was a guy who's now an American citizen, but he wasn't at the time he registered to vote. He got the ceremony just after his voter registration. That's their big crime wave of alien voters. But you'd say, okay, it's a joke, and that's how the New York Times plays it. It's a joke. This Kobach's a fool, that alien voters, double voters. Well, I'm not laughing, because that's how Trump got elected. Yep. It's no joke. Chris Kobach created a list of 3 million people, 3 million, that he said voted twice. I've got the list. He tried to hide it. If you know Greg Palast, I'm an investigative reporter. I got it. What happened is they set up this committee to tell you all about these illegal double voters. They didn't release the list. I've got it. I've been talking about it. But then when others started asking for these lists using freedom of information, which is, it's a unique United States thing that you can ask your government for the documents, because we're a government of the people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their documents, it's ours.
Right.
He refused to turn over the documents. His response was to tell Trump, shut down the committee that he's head of. Rather than turn over the documents, put all our investigations into the Department of Homeland Security, so that we can, in other words, basically using the kind of national security cover to say we can't give you any documents because this is all about national security. So they officially dissolved this little Trump vote fraud commission and put the function into the Department of Homeland Security. So in other words, illegally removing black and Hispanic and Asian American voters is somehow part of the war on terror. That's what's going on. And that's when you mentioned my update. And this past week, in fact, including today, this guy Chris Kobach is on trial. He's facing in Kansas. He instituted a law that requires Americans, when you go to vote, you have to prove you're a citizen. Now, that might say, well, yeah, only citizens should vote. And I agree with that. I'm sure you do, too, Alan.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, we don't have aliens. Like I said, they found one guy who registered just before he became a U.S. citizen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was their big deal. They found another one in Florida, an Austrian Republican. They got him. And then they found a second guy, a United States Marine, fighting in Iraq, but he was born in Santo Domingo, and he hadn't yet gotten his citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a U.S. Marine. His platoon sergeant had filled out a registration form for him. This is their big alien crime wave, someone who just became a citizen, a U.S. Marine, and some fool from Austria, who, by the way, did end up with 10 years in prison, and that followed by deportation.
Mm-hmm.
So aliens don't sign up. If you're an illegal alien, you're not supposed to be here. You're an alien. You blow everything if you dare sign up because they have your name and address.
Could you?
But yeah.
I was just gonna say, when people say that, or I hear a guest on Fox News or someone, I say to anyone who believes it, they think it's a valid argument. I said, are you kidding me? Can you remember ever seeing a bunch of Mexicans, and they're envisioning Mexicans who can't speak English, they're laborers who are waiting for work. They visualize these people standing in line, have the time and patience and fortitude. It won't happen. No one has, it's so absurd. It is.
Would you go to, if you're already hiding from, La Migra, you'd say, okay, well, I'll fill out a registration form with my name and address. And in most states now demand your phone number and your email address.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to pick up people who are aliens. The reason why they say that they're aliens is that they have a list from Department of Homeland Security of people deported. Not surprisingly, there's a lot of guys named Jose Hernandez on it, right? And Jose Garcia. So then Jose Garcia of Arizona and Jose Garcia of, and I'm not making up these examples; these are real examples.
Mm-hmm.
Jose Garcia of Alabama go to vote, and they say, "Well, you're an alien that's been deported. You're on the list. See Jose Garcia. Yes, there's the middle name is different, but that we don't care.
Yeah,
I'm not making this up. Okay, I am now. This is Greg Palast. I've now filed with several states, and by the way, no, I haven't told anyone on the air about this. I'm supposed to keep it quiet, but for you, Alan, something special.
Appreciate that.
We're going to many, many states and saying, turn over the list of people you're removing as double voters, as alien voters. And we got one state, Oklahoma, did send us a list of the people who vote twice, the people that they've actually removed. And we have a bunch of people, like one named John Black, whose middle name, he was accused of voting twice because, believe it or not, there's another John Black who voted in another state with a different middle name, but they're saying, well, that's not, that's the same guy. Really? And you'd say, I know, you're going to say, hey, Palast, Joe John Black is a very common name, not for Republicans. It's just like Jose Garcia ain't a name for Republicans.
Unbelievable.
And they're using this. I kid you not. They're doing this to remove voters, and so this is the problem. This is the problem, and it's continuing. This is why when you said, "Are they going to steal 2018 this way?" Yeah. By the way, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm not any of these things. I'm a reporter, and I'm going to tell you right now that this type of game absolutely stinks.
Let me
yes.
Finish your sentence, then I'm going to play a clip from your documentary. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, play on.
All right. This is just a little sample, and it's available everywhere.
43,000 black voters have just vanished. It's a half century after Martin Luther King was here, and I'm back in Selma, Alabama, investigating suppression of the black vote. What the hell happened to my country?
This voting system is out of control. You have people, in my opinion, that are voting many, many times.
Really, Don? A double voting crime wave. Is there really a gigantic conspiracy of 1 million Democrats to vote twice? Or is it a massive scheme to take away the votes of 1 million innocent people? Are you part of a large conspiracy?
No, I'm not, sir.
This is the story of the investigation of the theft of the 2016 election. It's a crime still in progress.
Just a clip. Excellent job.
Well, if you see it, I'm standing in a green screen, and we've got that guy who says I'm not part of a large conspiracy. His name is Donald Alexander Webster, and he was found to have voted twice because there was a guy named Donald Eugene Webster Jr. who voted in Virginia, and the Donald Alexander Webster voted in Ohio. They said it's the same voter. This is the game that's being played, and see, here's the trick. 85 of the 100 most common last names in America are minority names. Rodriguez, Chong, Lee, Garcia. There's 832,000 Garcias in America. So you're going to get these double names, and when you ignore the junior, senior, when you ignore the middle name, and they claim that they have the last four numbers of our Social Security numbers. Yeah, they do, but they don't use those in those matches to remove voters. So they know what they're doing, and this whole alien voter thing is based on the same matching of names from a deportation file. And yeah, you're going to have a lot of Hispanic names, a lot of Asian names, by the way. That's the new group, Alan, that they're going after. Asian Americans used to vote Republican. In fact, here's something that many Americans today would say, what? Most Muslims voted Republican. That's, by the way, the Muslim vote is what put George Bush over the top.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
And George Bush Jr. and George Bush Sr. But then, now Asian Americans, especially those from Korea, which is a big group here, they vote Democratic solidly now. This is new, and so Asian Americans who become citizens are voting Democratic. So now they're using all these tricks that they used on black folk on people who came here from Vietnam.
Greg, which states cooperated and gave up the personal information, the Social Security numbers, and things like that? Because I know some states said, "Nah." Which states cooperated?
Well, basically, you have 29 states who've cooperated with this kind of horrid purge program created by Trump's guy Kobach.
North Carolina, one of them?
North Carolina, absolutely. North Carolina is one of the worst states. I went to North Carolina. In my film, by the way, you'll see me go to North Carolina hunting down these so-called double voters. Because they didn't want to give me the list, but I got it anyway. North Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, Michigan, Arizona. I mean, you're getting the idea. These are important swing states. And 20 of the 29 states, 27 are Republican-controlled election boards.
Yeah. Michigan's Secretary of State, he admitted aggressively purging about 50,000 voters in the state. Trump won by 10,700. Same story in Pennsylvania, Illinois. and elsewhere around the country.
There's a lot of pushback, too. And like I say, Kobach is on trial on at least one leg of this operation on the alien voters. The ACLU has sued Kobach in his home state of Kansas, where he requires people to show proof of citizenship to vote. You know who got knocked out, by the way, in this one? It's not a bunch of Mexican-American voters, because, interestingly, if you just become a citizen, you have your naturalization papers, you can prove you're a citizen. The people who've gotten knocked out, the majority are 18 to 25-year-old new young voters.
That's right.
Almost all these were University of Kansas voters at Lawrence. 36,000 voters knocked out, mostly young people. And because they couldn't prove their citizenship, you say, well, where's their driver's license? Sorry, my great investigatrix at Greg Palast investigations operation is from Switzerland. She has a driver's license and she has a social security number. She can't drive or work without those two things, and she's a Swiss citizen. So how do you prove citizenship? Number one is a passport. Now, Alan, who has passports?
Right.
You don't have a lot of homies.
I don't.
who just come back from their vacation in the Alps. I just came back from my vacation in the Alps. I shouldn't mention that, but it's true. So I have a passport. But if a lot of people named Garcia from the barrio here, where I live in California, don't have passports. A lot, and then the other is your original birth certificate. And I mean original birth certificate. Don't give them some photocopy. We're talking you have to have a certified copy or the original. That's expensive, it's difficult, and a lot of people don't have those, especially poorer people. And there's one woman in this trial brought by the ACLU against Kobach saying, look, it's $50 to $60 for me to go get from the state of Maryland my original birth certificate certified. And it's, and then I have to then they make them go to hearings that take a day out of their work. This one woman, Bonnie Rucci is her name actually, Chris Kobach, who is his own lawyer in this case, said to her, well, why, you could have called my office and asked for an appointment, during, we're open 9 to 5. And she said, well, 9 to 5, I'm working in a state prison. And he said, so why didn't you just call? Do you have a cell phone? She says, yes, but you should know, sir, that in state prisons, you're not allowed to bring in a cell phone as an employee. So, it's like, it's nonsense. Yeah, some people can go and get their way around it, find their birth certificate. Obviously, if you're wealthier and travel, you're going to have your passport. I travel because, of course, I'm a correspondent. That's my job. But most Americans don't carry these things. Rich Americans have these things, and that's how they know how it will work. In other words, they create an obstacle course. And in my film, I actually have some it's tragic, but my film is a lot of funny scenes. And we have literally an obstacle course that's set up for representing the voters that's trying to get through. Where's your citizenship papers? Where's your ID? That's the other thing that the Republicans pushed heavy is the voter ID.
Yep.
And when it was first imposed by Indiana, the ACLU sued. And because there were 12 nuns, I can't make this up. It's in my film, and it's in my book, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, which is out there. 10 nuns. It was 10. I think I said 12. It was 10 nuns who could not vote because while they did have voter ID, they did have a driver's license. With the driver's licenses had expired, and Indiana said, you can't vote. I mean, you haven't expired. I mean, a driver's license, that's about taking a driver's test. A driver's license is perfect ID, but it's expired. So older people, believe it or not, who else doesn't have driver's licenses? People who don't drive, Alan.
Yep.
And they're poor people or they're students. How do they vote? Blue, Democratic. Look, I'm not here for the Democratic Party. I am here for people having the right to vote. And that's why I try to make a film that was both funny and at times, well, if you don't cry at the end, I'm going to pay for your therapy. But it is a very, we're talking about Stormy Daniels. I don't care. As long as she doesn't release photos, I don't care. Just please don't release photos while I'm eating lunch. Okay? That's That's my only fear. Don't not while I'm eating lunch, lady. Just don't do that to me.
It is so surreal, the life that so many of us are going through day in and day out. By the way, going back to things that they did in North Carolina, and by the way, we have a Democratic governor, so I was hoping maybe he wouldn't cooperate, but he has the House completely controlled by Republicans. So,
he's got for example, in North Carolina, you have a head of an elections board named Kim Strake, and the problem with dear Kim is not her husband. You'll like this. Is the chief lawyer, the chief counsel for the Republican Party of North Carolina, and his wife's in charge of the voting system.
That's not
now,
surprising.
I quoted her at length. She said she found, 750 people who have the same names as a voter in another state, 750 people who voted in another state and voted in North Carolina, the same middle names and the same last four numbers of Social Security, etc. And this is a crime wave. I said, so I went to North Carolina, and you'll see me do this in the film. And I say, they hired an FBI agent actually to go arrest these people. I said, how many of you arrested? By the way, just so you know, I asked that question in 2014. How many of you arrested? They said, oh, it's hard to find these people. I said, really? You got their names and addresses and phone numbers and emails? Why haven't you arrested any? Well, guess what? It's now 2018. They still haven't arrested anyone in North Carolina for voting in another state. Right. 2018, 4 years. Well, how many years do you need to find people that gave you their phone number and address and everything else? Please. So this is the game that's being played. North Carolina is one of the worst states out there. And, and you have to understand it's political groups, that have been bought out.
Let me give you another example of what they did that's supposed to add to security. The voting place for the students of Asheville University was right convenient. I think it was on campus, and then there was another one just down the road. Mm-hmm. Well, they moved them. So what you'd have to do now if you're a student is you'd have to get transportation or find a bus or walk to a bus stop somewhere. And even then, it's not even it's a long trip. It's a big hassle. Why? Don't tell me it's because of people voting who don't belong there. I mean, come on. If someone has a student ID, they're part of the college and they can be matched. I mean, if they have a license, what else do you expect? What else do you need? Nothing.
So they're trying everything. In fact, North Carolina, even the court's intelligence judge, thank God, threw it out, said you were not allowed. It was a crime to arrest someone. It was a crime. You get arrested for giving someone a registration form in North Carolina on a school campus. Now, let me remind you, you can give someone a gun on a school campus, but not a registration form to vote. So now let's back this up here. This is the game that they're playing. And it used to be, for example, I know a lot about it. North Carolina is a great example because it is that swing state. It's a purple state where every vote is fought for. In fact, it's just like in Virginia where these games cost the Democrats control of the legislature because one single vote, one voter by one vote, the legislature ended up tipping to the Republicans instead of Democrats. And in Virginia, they were stealing votes by the tens of thousands. We see it in North Carolina. So what's happened is they're targeting these voters that they don't like, young people, African American voters, Asian American voters, Hispanic voters, because they know that's the demographic. And in North Carolina, they also used a trick called caging, where they would send you have a right-wing group in North Carolina, in Raleigh, called Voter Integrity Project. And they go around hunting illegal voters. They just haven't caught any, okay? But they've created this hysteria. Mm-hmm. And
that's what it was designed for. That's what it all is.
Yeah. And so it's a fake hysteria. So we have, in our film, we have a very funny scene where I say how they get away with it, the hysteria factory. And then we have a very expensive special special effects in the film, where you go into a drive-in movie and you see these horror films about the alien voters and the dead voters and the double voters and the felon voters.
Yeah.
It's like, and so it's, we make a joke out of it. I try to keep it as interesting as possible. Funny cartoons, special effects. Willie Nelson playing a stoner musician, believe it or not. And I do that to, keep you watching the film and enjoying it. But
it's all seriousness.
It's the death of democracy in America. This is serious stuff.
This is serious stuff.
We can fight it. We can fight it.
By the way, Greg Palast.com, we're talking to investigative reporter and journalist and author, as we said in the introduction. You might remember, by the way, back in the last election when George Bush, all those hanging chads, it was this guy who was really the guy who exposed Katherine Harris and the purge, all those voters, 2,000 elections? How many of those were purged?
About 58,000 black people from the voter rolls, calling them felons.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a guy in my film. We do it, by the way, in the film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Again, free on Amazon Prime, or you go to gregpalast.com. We have a cartoon, like a Saturday morning cartoon, drawn by the guy who framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
And we show Jeb and Catherine going after these evil criminals, but then you actually get to meet on camera a guy named Willie Steen, a Gulf War veteran who was denied the right to vote. They said he committed a felony. He was matched with a guy named Willie Osteen of Ohio, who was white, who got convicted of a crime. This is Willie Osteen, who's African American. He lost his vote because they said he was a felon. So this whole thing of all these criminals on the voter rolls, really? Then go and arrest them, because I do believe, Alan, I'm a firm believer that if there's an illegal voter, an alien, someone voting who's a convict from prison. By the way, in most states, if you're listening to this, in most states in the United States of America, if you've served your time, you can vote. It's an urban myth that you can't vote if you have a felony conviction.
By the way,
serve your time, you can vote.
You could vote. Didn't the courts throw out North Carolina's attempt to suppress the vote? Didn't they stop that?
Some of it. They stopped a lot of it. Like the idea that you could get arrested for handing someone a voter form in a school. They stopped a lot of it, but unfortunately, they continue some of the games, and they simply violate the court orders, like you say. They move the voting places off campus.
Yeah.
Now the general rule is that for about every 10,000 voters, you want a local voting station, not at Asheville, because they don't want those students to vote. They know how they vote. In fact, a politician in New Hampshire said, "Yeah, we have to stop students from voting because you know how they vote. They vote liberal."
Yeah.
He literally said that on the record.
I know. They've said that. They talk about it's just amazing. But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Here we are. What can, sometimes when you try to give people the information that proves your point, they're not going to believe the information because they got whatever their media is, usually Fox News and most of commercial talk radio. So what do you do? What do you do? It's like you got to have a debriefing, from people who are brainwashed. It sounds like we have a small but loyal following that President Trump has. Not all of them, but some of them are brainwashed. They believe him.
Well, here's the thing, is that you got to get informed. And if you watch Best Democracy Money Can Buy, you get informed, read the book. But if you know how they're stealing it from you, you can stop the steal. You can't stop a pickpocket unless you know that there's a pickpocket reaching into your pants, right? So you start out with information. The second is, don't get discouraged because people say, they're going to steal my vote. I'm not going to vote. Well, that's what they want you to do. Don't steal your own vote.
Right.
Don't not vote. Don't be crazy. In fact, look, they only take your vote because it's worth a lot of money. That's why they're putting all this money into this stealing, all this money in the campaign, because your vote's really valuable. Money, cash money, it's worth a lot. If you were to actually have vote buying in America, and we don't have that, but, it would be a few $100s. You'd probably get about $500 for your vote. It's valuable. Don't throw it away. You wouldn't throw a $500 bill in the garbage. Don't throw it away. Go vote. Now, that that's the other thing. Then give other people the information. You know what? The fight for the vote has been here since the founding of the Republic.
Yep.
And so it will continue on. And just because we had Martin Luther King cross the bridge at Selma and we got the Voting Rights Act, that was the Voting Rights Act was effectively taken away in 2013. We got to keep fighting these fights, and that's how it works. Because the truth is, if everyone voted, we'd have a very, very different government. And I'm not blaming the people who voted for Trump because they're not given. You and we're giving out information. You listen to Allan, you get all kinds of stuff you don't get from the lamestream media. And frankly, you don't get from liberal MSDNC. They're all about, it's going to be Stormy Daniels and, today Rex Tillerson was fired and, the latest, Trump-gasm that they have. And I don't care, because that's all the puppet show. Yeah. I would rather talk with you, Allan Handelman, about the puppeteers.
Well, I appreciate that, and you're right. I mean, it's important talking about Russia. People are just consumed with it. But my God, they stole the election. They're going to do it again.
Yeah, and it was not stolen with a couple $1 million in Facebook ads. That it was by the Russians. The Republican Party does not need help from Putin to figure out how you block a black man from voting, how you block a student from voting. That's how the election was stolen, and that's not what's being talked about, because I'll tell you the other thing. The Democratic Party is afraid of having everyone vote because the people in charge of the party would never win primaries, and they won't be there. So if you let every student vote, Bernie Sanders would be the candidate. In fact, it'd be President Sanders today if they let every student vote and they counted all of Bernie's votes. The second is, I went to states like New Mexico. You had the wealthy Hispanic Democrats like Bill Richardson stealing votes from the poor Hispanic Democrats. So this is not about partisanship.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats steal votes too. But the thing is right now, but why am I always talking about the Republicans right now? Because they're the ones who are they've got the most advanced technology now to do this. They're the ones that are purging people literally by the hundreds of thousands. You add up 29 states, like you say, that was how Trump got elected in Michigan. I went there. I saw it. I saw it in Wisconsin. Just a straight up in your face steal. I saw it in states they're not talking about, like North Carolina, Ohio, Arizona. You had people blocked from voting, and votes that were 2.7 million ballots were cast, what they call provisionally. These aren't people that were trying to cheat, but they threw out their votes. And so that's why I'm talking about this stuff. But it's not partisan. It's about your country. You get to name it.
You bet.
And I'm going to tell you. And also in the film, we do talk about one other thing, which is the billionaires behind the theft, and that's important. They steal your vote because they want to get the money. They don't care which clown is up there in the Oval Office. It's about control by some very, very wealthy guys that we name in the film.
That's right. And the way you put the documentary together, there's humor. But my God, if it wasn't for the comedians and the guys on late night shows, man, that's what keeps you sane. Listen, it's Greg Palast, gregpalast.com, the documentary based on the book, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, The Case of the Stolen Election. Videos everywhere online, and you can get a hard copy, too, on Amazon. Always good to talk to you, Greg. You keep up the good work.
Okay. You're the best, Allan, and by the way, let me have a link so we can spread the word.
You got it.